Dr. Emily Walker stared at the readings on her computer screen for the fifth time. Something wasn't right. The numbers from the deep-sea sensors made no sense, but they kept showing the same results hour after hour. "James, can you come look at this?" She called out to her research partner. Dr. James Cooper walked across the gently swaying laboratory of the research vessel, Nautilus, coffee cup in hand. "What's wrong?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder to look at the screen. "These methane readings from the deep-sea vent. They're backwards." Emily pointed to the graph on her screen. Deep-sea vents usually release methane, but these readings show the opposite. Something down there is absorbing massive amounts of greenhouse gases. James nearly spilled his coffee. That's impossible. At that depth. The Nautilus had been stationed above the Mariana Trench for the past 3 weeks. At 11,000 meters below sea level, the pressure was crushing. Most equipment couldn't even function at that depth, but their new sensors were specially designed for extreme conditions. "Run the tests again," James suggested, but Emily was already shaking her head. "I've run them 5 times. The equipment is working perfectly. Something down there is consuming methane at an unprecedented rate." She pulled up another screen showing a 3D map of the ocean floor. "And look at this. The absorption pattern is too regular to be natural. It's almost like it's engineered." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Dr. Walker to the bridge, please. Dr. Walker to the bridge." Emily stood up, straightening her lab coat. "That's probably Robert. The submersible should be ready for today's dive." When she reached the bridge, Robert Mitchell, their submersible pilot, was already suited up. "Morning, Doc," he said with a grin. "Ready to go where few have gone before." "Just let me grab my equipment," Emily replied, trying to hide her excitement. This would be their deepest dive yet, and with these strange readings, she had no idea what they might find. An hour later, Emily and Robert were squeezed into the tiny submersible, slowly descending into the darkness. The vessel's powerful lights cut through the black water, illuminating strange creatures that quickly darted away from the unexpected brightness. "Passing 5,000 meters, Robert announced, keeping his eyes on the instruments. "All systems normal." Emily barely heard him. She was focused on her tablet, watching the methane readings grow stronger as they descended. "The absorption rates are getting stronger. Whatever's causing this is definitely deeper." At 8,000 meters, they began to see the first signs of bioluminescence, tiny creatures creating their own light in the darkness. But something was odd about their behavior. "Robert, are you seeing this?" Emily asked, pointing to a group of glowing organisms. "They're moving in a pattern." The bioluminescent creatures were indeed moving in a synchronized way, almost like a dance. As the submersible descended further, the pattern became more obvious. 9,500 meters, Robert called out, setting new depth record for Nautilus. Suddenly, their lights illuminated something that made them both gasp. Rising from the ocean floor was a structure that couldn't possibly be natural. Crystalline formations rose in perfect geometric patterns, pulsing with a deep blue light that matched the rhythm of the bioluminescent creatures swimming around it. "Please tell me you're recording this," Emily whispered, her scientific mind racing to make sense of what she was seeing. "Every second," Robert confirmed, his voice equally quiet. "What do you think it is?" Before Emily could answer, their instruments went wild. The methane absorption readings spiked off the charts, and the water around them began to show rapid temperature changes. The structure, Emily realized, it's not just absorbing methane. It's processing it somehow. "Robert, I think we just found Earth's natural climate control system." As they watched in amazement, the crystalline structure continued its steady pulse, a testament to something far more complex than anyone had imagined existing in these depths. Emily knew that with this discovery, everything they understood about Earth's climate was about to change. Up on the surface, Dr. James Cooper was about to receive the most important video feed of his career, unaware that this was just the beginning of a discovery that would reshape humanity's role on planet Earth. 3 days after their initial discovery, Emily and Robert prepared for another dive. The entire crew of the Nautilus was buzzing with excitement. Word of their finding had spread, but they had kept the details secret until they could gather more information. "Equipment check complete," Robert said, running through his pre-dive checklist. The submersible had been upgraded with additional sensors and cameras. "Ready when you are, Doc." Emily nodded, her hands tight around her tablet. "Let's go deeper this time. I want to see what's on the other side of that structure." As they descended, James's voice crackled through their radio. "Remember, no risks. If anything seems off, come back immediately." The darkness swallowed them once again, but this time they knew what waited below. At 9,000 meters, the first signs of the strange bioluminescence appeared. The creatures still moved in their perfect patterns, like underwater fireflies performing a choreographed dance. "Look at this," Emily said, pointing to her readings. "The water temperature changes match the light pulses exactly. It's not random at all." Robert steered the submersible closer to where they had found the crystal structure. As it came into view, both of them leaned forward in amazement. The formation had changed. "That wasn't like this before," Robert whispered. The crystalline towers now formed a perfect circle, and in the center, a new structure had emerged. It looked like a door. Emily's tablet suddenly lit up with readings. The methane absorption just doubled. "Whatever this thing is, it's more active now." Robert carefully maneuvered the submersible around the circle of crystals. Each tower pulsed with light in sequence, creating a rotating pattern of blues and greens. The bioluminescent creatures followed the pattern, swimming in perfect circles around them. "Should we try to get closer to the center?" Robert asked, his hand steady on the controls. Emily checked their depth gauge, 10,500 meters. "Yes, but slowly. We don't know what." Before she could finish, a beam of light shot out from the central structure, scanning their submersible from top to bottom. Both Emily and Robert sat frozen, unsure whether to retreat or stay put. "Nautilus, are you seeing this?" Robert called through the radio. James's voice came back, filled with static. "Signal's weak, but we're recording everything." "What are those energy readings?" The scanning beam disappeared, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the door-like structure in the center began to open. It wasn't a door at all, but rather an iris-like opening, revealing a chamber beyond. "It's responding to our presence," Emily realized. "This isn't just a natural formation, it's technology. Ancient, advanced technology." The bioluminescent creatures suddenly changed their pattern, forming a path from their submersible to the open chamber. The water around them warmed by several degrees, and Emily's instruments showed the methane levels dropping to near zero in their immediate vicinity. "It's inviting us in," Robert said, his voice a mix of fear and wonder. Emily's scientific training battled with her curiosity. "We shouldn't. The pressure at this depth is changing," Robert interrupted, pointing to his gauges. "Look at this. The area inside that chamber. It's different. Like it has its own atmosphere. Above them." James's voice crackled through again. "Whatever you're seeing down there is causing massive changes in the ocean currents. The whole temperature system around you is shifting." Emily made a decision. "Take us in, Robert." Slowly, at the first sign of danger, we pull back. As they moved toward the opening, the crystal towers pulsed faster, their light growing brighter. The bioluminescent creatures parted before them like a living curtain. Just before they entered the chamber, Emily spotted something that made her heart stop. Writing, etched into the crystal walls in patterns that looked strangely familiar. "Robert," she said quietly, "I don't think we're the first ones to find this place, but I think we might be the first ones to come back to it in a very, very long time." The submersible crossed the threshold into the chamber, and both of them knew that whatever they found inside would change their understanding of Earth's history forever. Dr. Michael Thompson arrived at the Nautilus 2 days after Emily and Robert's encounter with the underwater chamber. As an archaeologist who specialized in ancient writing systems, he hadn't expected to ever work 11,000 meters below the ocean's surface. "Show me the symbols again," he asked, leaning close to the high-resolution screen in the ship's laboratory. Emily pulled up the clearest images they had captured. "They were carved into every crystal tower," she explained, "and they glowed when we got closer." Michael adjusted his glasses, his eyes wide with excitement. "This is impossible," he whispered. "These match patterns we found in ancient sites around the world, but we never knew what they meant." James walked into the lab, carrying 3 cups of coffee. "What do you mean they match?" "These structures are underwater, at depths we couldn't reach until recently." "Exactly," Michael said, accepting a coffee. "Which means whoever built this place had technology far beyond what we thought possible for Earth's early civilizations. Look at this pattern here." He pointed to a series of curved lines that formed a circular pattern. "We found this exact design in caves in South America, Africa, and Asia, all of them near locations where the Earth's climate showed unusual stability over millions of years." Emily's tablet beeped with new data from their underwater sensors. "The methane absorption rates are still increasing," she reported. "And look at this. The water temperature around the structure maintains a perfect pattern, like a heartbeat." "It's a monitoring station," Michael said suddenly, making both Emily and James turn to look at him. "These symbols, they're not just decoration. They're data. Ancient data about Earth's climate systems." Robert's voice came through the lab's intercom. "Dr. Walker, you need to see this. The chamber is doing something new." They rushed to the monitoring room, where Robert had multiple screens showing live feeds from their deep-sea cameras. The crystalline chamber they had discovered was pulsing with intense light, and the bioluminescent creatures around it had formed new patterns. "It's responding to our presence," Emily realized. "Every time we observe it, it shows us something new." Michael stepped closer to the screens, his coffee forgotten. "The symbols are changing. They're teaching us how to read them." Over the next several hours, they watched as the ancient structure displayed sequence after sequence of symbols. Michael worked frantically, comparing them to his database of ancient writings. "It's a story," he said finally, his voice filled with awe. "A story about our planet's climate history. Look, these patterns show temperature cycles, ocean currents, and atmospheric changes. This isn't just a monitoring station, it's a library." "But who built it?" James asked. "And why?" Before anyone could answer, all the screens suddenly flickered. The crystal structure's light pattern changed dramatically, and new symbols appeared on its surface. "Those are numbers," Michael said, quickly translating. "Dates. My God. According to this, the system was built over 100,000 years ago." Emily's tablet showed another surge of activity. "The methane processing is changing. It's becoming more efficient, like it's upgrading itself." "Not upgrading," Michael corrected, still translating the symbols. "Awakening. It was waiting for us to find it, to prove we were ready." James looked skeptical. "Ready for what?" "To understand," Michael explained, his fingers tracing the ancient symbols on the screen. "This facility is part of a planetary climate control system. The builders left it here, along with others like it around the world, to keep Earth's climate stable. They were preparing for someone to find it eventually, someone who could understand and maintain it." Emily watched as more symbols appeared on the crystal surfaces. "Are you saying this is some kind of inheritance? A gift from an ancient civilization?" "More like a test," Michael said quietly, "and how we handle this discovery will determine whether we pass or fail." The chamber's lights pulsed one more time, and a new door appeared in its depths, waiting to reveal even more secrets about Earth's hidden past and humanity's possible future. News of the discovery spread faster than the Nautilus team had expected. 1 week after they found the ancient climate control system, Dr. Lisa Anderson from the Global Climate Institute stepped onto the ship's deck. Her face showed both excitement and worry. "We found 5 more," she announced as soon as she met with the team in the ship's conference room. All in deep ocean trenches around the world. All active. Emily, James, and Michael exchanged looks of surprise. Robert, who had just come up from checking the submersible, sat down heavily in his chair. "Where?" Emily asked, pulling up a world map on the room's main screen. Lisa pointed to different locations: the Pacific Ocean near Chile, the Atlantic off West Africa, the Indian Ocean, and 2 in the Arctic. They all started activating 3 days ago, right after you entered that chamber. The timing isn't a coincidence, Michael said, spreading out his notes covered in ancient symbols. According to what we've translated, these stations work together. They're all connected. James pulled up the latest data from their underwater sensors. Look at this. Global ocean temperatures are starting to stabilize. The methane levels in deep waters are dropping everywhere, not just here. That's why I'm here, Lisa said, her voice becoming serious. The world's governments are starting to notice. You can't hide temperature changes this big. We need to decide how to announce this to the world. Before anyone could respond, Robert pointed at one of the monitoring screens. Something's happening down there. The chamber they had discovered was pulsing with new patterns of light. The bioluminescent creatures around it had formed a new shape, something that looked like a map of Earth. It's showing us the other stations, Emily realized, comparing the glowing pattern to their world map. And look, there are more than what we found. Many more. Lisa leaned forward, counting the glowing points. 15 total. We've only found 6. And they're all starting to wake up, Michael added, watching as new symbols appeared on the crystal walls. They're sharing data with each other, comparing notes from thousands of years of monitoring Earth's climate. Suddenly, all their tablets and computers lit up with incoming data. Numbers, charts, and graphs flooded their screens, centuries of climate information pouring in from the ancient monitoring system. This is incredible, Lisa breathed, scrolling through the data. Temperature records going back 100,000 years, ocean current patterns we never knew existed, solutions to climate problems we thought were impossible to solve. James studied the numbers carefully. According to this, the system isn't just monitoring anymore. It's actively working to restore balance. The deep sea vents, the ocean currents, even the behavior of marine microorganisms, it's all being gently adjusted. But why now? Robert asked. Why reveal itself after staying hidden for so long? Emily thought about the patterns they'd seen, the way the system had tested them before sharing its secrets. Because we finally started looking in the right place. We started paying attention to the deep oceans, to how Earth's climate really works. We proved we were ready to understand. Lisa stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean. The question is, are we ready for what comes next? This discovery changes everything we thought we knew about Earth's climate, about our planet's history, about humanity's role in it all. We don't have a choice, Michael said, still translating new symbols as they appeared. According to this, the system is already changing, adapting to work with modern conditions. It needs us to understand it, to work with it. We're not just observers anymore. We're becoming part of the system. The ship's computers continued to fill with data as more stations awakened around the world. In the depths below them, the ancient machinery hummed with renewed purpose, ready to share its secrets with a world that desperately needed them. Emily looked at her team, then at the glowing map of Earth's deep ocean climate stations. Then we'd better make sure we get this right. The whole world is watching now, and we have a lot of work to do. Emily stared at the sample under her microscope with growing concern. The crystal fragment they had collected from the outer edge of the underwater structure was changing. Tiny cracks spread across its surface like a spider's web. James, we have a problem, she called out, not taking her eyes off the sample. James walked over from his computer station, coffee cup in hand as usual. When he looked through the microscope, he nearly dropped his drink. Is that deterioration? Yes. Emily sat back in her chair. The ocean's acid levels are eating away at the ancient structures. They weren't built to handle this much pollution. The door to the lab opened, and Lisa rushed in. Her face was pale. "We're getting reports from the other sites. All the structures are showing signs of damage. The one off the coast of Chile is the worst." Robert's voice came through the ship's intercom. "You all need to see this. The chamber is changing." They hurried to the monitoring room, where the screens showed live feeds from their deep-sea cameras. The crystalline chamber that had been so beautiful just days ago now looked sick. Its usual bright blue glow had dimmed to a pale flicker. "The methane absorption rates are dropping," James reported, checking the data. "Whatever these structures do to process greenhouse gases, they're struggling to keep up." Michael burst into the room, holding his tablet. "I finished translating more of the symbols. The system was designed to last for millions of years, but it wasn't built to handle modern pollution levels. Our ocean acidification is literally dissolving it." "How long do we have?" Lisa asked. Emily pointed to her calculations on a nearby screen. "At this rate of deterioration, 2 weeks, maybe 3, before the damage becomes irreversible." Suddenly, the deep-sea cameras caught movement. Strange creatures they had never seen before were gathering around the damaged parts of the structure. They looked like a cross between giant squid and manta rays, but their bodies seemed to glow from within. "What are they?" Robert whispered, zooming in with the cameras. "More importantly, where did they come from?" James added. "We've been watching these waters for weeks. How did we not see them before?" The creatures moved with clear purpose, touching the damaged crystal sections with their glowing appendages. Where they touched, the deterioration seemed to slow. "They're trying to repair it," Emily realized. "They must be part of the system, maintenance workers left behind by the builders." Michael quickly photographed the creatures, comparing their shapes to symbols they had seen. "Here, these exact beings are shown in the ancient texts. They're called, well, the closest translation would be guardians." Lisa's phone buzzed with incoming messages. "Similar creatures have appeared at all the other sites. They're all trying to repair the damage. But," she paused, reading more messages, "they're struggling. The acid levels are too high." "We need to help them," Emily said firmly. She turned to James. "What if we used our new coral regeneration compound? The one we developed for reef restoration?" James's eyes widened. "The calcium carbonate mix. It might work, but we'd need massive quantities and a way to apply it at these depths. I might have a solution for that." A new voice said. Everyone turned to see David Parker, a marine engineer who had arrived the day before, standing in the doorway. "I've been working on a deep-sea construction method using robotic drones. If we combine our technologies." "We've got 2 weeks," Emily stated, looking at each person in the room. 2 weeks to save a 100,000-year-old climate control system that we barely understand. But if those guardians aren't giving up, neither are we." As if in response to her words, the strange creatures below moved in a synchronized pattern, their bodies glowing brighter. The ancient structure pulsed once, weakly, like a signal of hope. The race to save Earth's hidden climate control system had begun. David Parker's workshop on the Nautilus looked more like an inventor's playground than a standard ship facility. Robotic parts and half-built machines covered every surface. In the center of the room, a group of small, round underwater drones floated in a testing tank. "These are our delivery system," David explained to the team. He lifted one of the drones out of the water. It was about the size of a dinner plate, with multiple propellers and a large compartment in its center. "They can handle the pressure at 11,000 meters, and I've modified them to work alongside the guardian creatures." Emily held up a vial of pale blue liquid. "And this is our healing compound. James and I worked all night to adjust the formula. It should help neutralize the acid and provide raw materials for the crystal structures to rebuild themselves." "Like giving medicine to the ocean," Lisa said, watching as James carefully filled the first drone's storage compartment with the compound. The ship's radio crackled. "Dr. Anderson." It was the captain's voice. We're getting calls from all the other research vessels. They want to know if we're ready. Lisa picked up the radio. Tell them to stand by. We're testing the solution now. Robert, who had been monitoring the deep-sea cameras, called out, "The Guardians are moving away from the structure. It's like they're giving us space to work." Emily looked at David. "How many drones do we have?" 15 ready to go, he answered, already programming their routes. 5 more almost finished. Each one can carry enough compound for about 100 square meters of crystal surface. Michael rushed into the workshop, his tablet displaying new translations. "I think I know why the Guardians are backing off. The symbols say they're programmed to recognize potential allies. They're letting us prove ourselves." James finished loading the last drone and closed its compartment. "Well, let's not keep them waiting. Time to see if this works." The team moved to the control room, where they could monitor the drone's descent. On multiple screens, they watched as the small machines dropped into the darkness, their lights creating a string of pearls leading down to the ancient structure. First drone reaching target depth, David announced, his hand steady on the controls. Beginning application sequence. The lead drone approached a damaged section of crystal. Its compartment opened, releasing a careful stream of the blue compound. The liquid seemed to glow as it made contact with the crystal surface. "Look," Emily pointed to their readings. "The acid levels are dropping around the application point, and the crystal. It's actually accepting the compound." The Guardian creatures moved closer, their bodies pulsing with light. One of them touched the treated area with a glowing tentacle. "Temperature stabilizing in that section," James reported excitedly. "The crystal is starting to regenerate." Encouraged by the success, David deployed the rest of the drones. They spread out across the structure, working in perfect sync with the Guardians. Where the drones applied the compound, the strange creatures followed, their touch seeming to guide and strengthen the healing process. Lisa's phone buzzed with incoming messages. The other sites are reporting the same results. The Guardians are accepting our help everywhere. The system is starting to recover. Michael studied the symbols appearing on the crystal surfaces. The ancient text was right. This was a test, not just of our technology, but of our willingness to help, to work together with something we don't fully understand. "Look at the efficiency readings," Emily said, pointing to a rapidly climbing graph. "The structure isn't just healing, it's getting stronger. Our compound is helping it adapt to modern ocean conditions." As they watched, the crystal structure's glow began to brighten, its light pulsing in harmony with the Guardian's movements. The drones continued their careful work, guided by human ingenuity and working alongside creatures from Earth's ancient past. "We did it," David said quietly, watching as the deterioration readings dropped across all monitoring stations. "We found a way to help them help us." Emily smiled, thinking of all the impossible things they had accomplished in the past few days. "No," she corrected, "we're just getting started. This isn't just about saving their system. It's about learning to be better Guardians ourselves." The repair work had been going on for 5 days straight when Emily noticed something different about the Guardian creatures' behavior. They had started forming new patterns with their lights, more complex than anything seen before. "Michael," she called out, "are you seeing this? The light patterns are changing." Michael looked up from his translation work and moved to the monitoring screens. His eyes widened. "These aren't random. They're trying to talk to us." The entire team gathered in the control room. The Guardians had arranged themselves in a circle around the main crystal structure, their bodies pulsing with coordinated bursts of light. "It's similar to how the crystal structures communicate," James said, comparing the patterns to their earlier recordings, "but more direct." David adjusted their underwater lights to match the Guardians' rhythm. Almost immediately, the creatures responded by changing their pattern. "They're mimicking us," Robert exclaimed. "Try it again." For the next hour, they experimented with different light sequences. Each time they sent a pattern, the Guardians would respond with something more complex. "It's like they're teaching us their language," Lisa observed. She had been recording every exchange. Look at how they build on each pattern we send. Suddenly, the main crystal structure lit up with intense blue light. The Guardians moved to form a line between it and their observation cameras. Then something extraordinary happened. Images began to appear in the water between the Guardians, created by their combined bioluminescence. They showed scenes from Earth's past, ancient civilizations, changing climates, the rise and fall of species. They're showing us their memories, Michael whispered. Everything they've watched over the centuries. The images changed to show the builders of the system, beings that looked both familiar and alien, working with the first Guardians to create the crystal structures. They weren't left behind, Emily realized, watching the story unfold. They chose to stay, to watch, to wait. The next images showed modern humans, their first attempts to explore the deep ocean, their growing understanding of climate change, and finally, the moment the Nautilus team discovered the crystal structure. We're part of their story now, James said softly. They've been evaluating us this whole time. The Guardians shifted their pattern again, and new images appeared. They showed possible futures, oceans recovering, ecosystems healing, humans and Guardians working together to maintain Earth's climate balance. Lisa's phone buzzed with messages from other research sites. The same thing is happening everywhere. All the Guardians are communicating at once. Through their combined lights, the Guardians showed one final image, a map of Earth with countless points of light, far more than the 15 stations they had found. There are hundreds of them, David said in amazement. Smaller stations, backup systems, monitoring points, all waiting to be rediscovered. The crystal structure pulsed again, and new symbols appeared on its surface. Michael quickly translated them. It's not just a climate control system, he said, his voice filled with wonder. It's a partnership. The builders didn't abandon it. They left it for us to find when we were ready to become partners in maintaining Earth's balance. One of the Guardians moved closer to their camera, its light patterns forming clear, deliberate symbols. Will you join us? Michael translated. They're asking for our help, not just to repair the system, but to become new Guardians ourselves. Emily looked at her team, then back at the waiting creatures. How do we say yes? James smiled and moved to the light controls. He programmed a simple pattern, the same one they had first seen the Guardians use when they discovered the structure. The response was immediate. All the Guardians lit up at once, their light filling the deep ocean with a brilliant glow. The crystal structure hummed with renewed energy, and through their instruments, they could feel the whole system coming to full power for the first time in thousands of years. I think, Lisa said with a smile. They got our message. 6 months after their first discovery, the Nautilus had become the headquarters for what people were calling the Deep Sea Ranger program. The ship's laboratory had tripled in size, with new sections built specifically for training future deep-sea climate guardians. Emily watched through the observation window as a group of trainees practiced controlling the upgraded drones. David had redesigned them to work even better with the Guardian creatures, adding special light panels for communication. The newest group is learning faster than we did, James said, joining her at the window. The Guardians seem more patient with them. They should be, Emily smiled. These students grew up dreaming about working with deep-sea creatures. We just stumbled into it by accident. Lisa walked into the room, carrying her ever-present tablet. The United Nations just approved our proposal. Every country with a deep-sea research program will start their own Ranger training center. And the Guardians? James asked. They've already started appearing at the proposed sites, Lisa answered. It's like they know our plans before we make them. Michael burst into the room, excitement clear on his face. You need to see this. The Guardians are showing us something new. They'd rushed to the monitoring room, where Robert was already adjusting the cameras. The main screen showed a group of Guardians arranged around one of the newer crystal structures they had discovered last month. Watch this, Robert said, zooming in. The Guardians were teaching a group of younger members of their species. The smaller creatures were learning to repair crystal damages, their lights flickering as they practiced the patterns. They're training their next generation too, Emily realized. Just like us. David joined them, carrying blueprints for his latest drone design. Perfect timing. The new maintenance pods are ready for testing. Want to show the young ones how humans do their part? Emily nodded, and David sent down 3 of his new drones. They watched as the machines approached the training area. The young Guardians stopped their practice to observe, their lights pulsing with curiosity. "Remember when we were terrified of making first contact?" James asked, smiling as the young Guardians playfully swam around the drones. "Now look at us, running an international training program with ancient sea creatures." Lisa's tablet beeped with new data. Global ocean temperatures have stabilized completely. Methane levels are the lowest they've been in a century. The system is working better than ever. Through the cameras, they could see more Guardians arriving. The crystal structure pulsed with bright, healthy light, its symbols telling the story of Earth's climate to anyone who knew how to read them. "You know what still amazes me?" Michael said, looking up from his latest translations. "These beings could have taken control of Earth's climate themselves. Instead, they waited thousands of years for partners who could understand and appreciate what they do." "Speaking of partners," Robert called out, "looks like our students have some new classmates." On the screen, several young Guardians had joined the human trainees' drone practice session. They were working together, the Guardians using their lights to guide the drones through complex repair patterns. "That's the future right there," Emily said softly. "Humans and Guardians, learning from each other, protecting Earth together." The main crystal structure suddenly lit up with a familiar pattern, the same symbol for partnership that the Guardians had shown them 6 months ago. But this time, it was followed by new symbols. Michael quickly translated. It says, "The legacy continues. 2 species, 1 purpose." As they watched the young humans and Guardians train together in the deep ocean, Emily thought about how far they had come. From a mysterious discovery to a global partnership, from fear of the unknown to understanding and cooperation. "Ready for the afternoon training session?" Lisa asked, checking her schedule. Emily nodded, looking at the thriving ocean ecosystem on their screens. The crystal structures glowed with healthy light. The Guardians moved with purpose, and humans worked alongside them, all protecting the delicate balance that kept their planet alive. "Always ready," she said. "We've got an entire planet counting on us now."